Shy virgin entered the wrong room and won the heart of the CEO, and now he's asking her to marry him. Maya Suarez stared at her reflection in the gleaming elevator doors of the Plaza Hotel, hardly recognizing herself in the sleek black dress she'd borrowed from her roommate. Her dark curls, usually free and natural, were swept into an elegant updo that had taken an hour to perfect. The intern mixer for Newman & Brooks Design Agency was being held in one of New York's most prestigious hotels, and despite her attempts to look the part, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. 20th floor, she whispered to herself, double-checking the email on her phone. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pressed the button, watching the numbers climb. Growing up in a small town in New Jersey, Maya had always dreamed of making it in New York City. Now at 22, she was living that dream, even if it meant surviving on instant ramen and working extra shifts at a coffee shop to afford her share of a cramped apartment in Brooklyn. The elevator dinged, and Maya stepped out into a corridor that screamed old-world luxury. Crystal sconces cast a warm glow on cream-colored walls, and plush carpet muffled her careful steps. She glanced down at her phone again, frowning at the room number. 2010, or was it 2001? The digits in the email suddenly seemed to blur together. Taking a deep breath, Maya turned right, her borrowed heels clicking against the occasional exposed marble. The corridor stretched ahead, identical doors on either side. She stopped in front of room 2010, hearing muffled voices from inside. This had to be it. The mixer was supposed to start at 7, and she was already 10 minutes late. Without allowing herself another moment of hesitation, Maya knocked. No response. The voices continued their muted conversation. She tried the handle. It turned easily under her hand. Relief flooded through her as she pushed the door open. "I'm so sorry, I'm late." The words died in her throat. This was definitely not the intern mixer. Instead of a crowded reception room, Maya found herself standing in what appeared to be a luxury suite. A man stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, his back to her. He wore an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that highlighted broad shoulders, and even from behind, everything about him radiated power and authority. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, his voice deep and measured. He turned, and Maya felt her heart skip several beats. He was striking. Not in the conventional pretty boy way of the guys she usually encountered at college, but in a way that commanded attention. Dark hair swept back from a strong forehead, slight shadows under intense eyes that suggested long hours, and a jawline that could cut glass. But it was his expression that caught her, surprise mixed with something else, something that made her feel like she was being solved like a puzzle. "I'm so sorry," Maya stammered, already backing toward the door. "Wrong room. I was looking for the Newman & Brooks event." "That would be in the Grand Ballroom," he said, his lips curving into what might have been amusement. 2 floors down. Heat rushed to Maya's cheeks. "I am so sorry. The email said 20th floor, and She gestured helplessly at the door. "I'll just go. Again, I'm really sorry for barging in." She turned to flee, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." Maya froze, her hand on the doorknob. "The Grand Ballroom can be tricky to find," he said, crossing the room with casual grace. "Take the main elevator down to 18, turn left past the portrait gallery, and it's through the double doors at the end." "Thank you," Maya managed, finally looking up to meet his eyes properly. They were a startling shade of grey-blue, like storm clouds gathering over the ocean. Something flickered in them as their gazes locked, recognition perhaps, or curiosity. For a moment neither of them moved. The air seemed to thicken with unspoken questions. Then Maya's phone buzzed loudly in her clutch, shattering the strange tension. "I should—" She gestured vaguely toward the door. "Of course." He stepped back, that almost smile playing at the corners of his mouth again. "Good luck at the mixer." Maya nodded, slipping out into the hallway. As the door clicked shut behind her, she leaned against the wall, her heart racing. What was wrong with her? So she'd walked into the wrong room. Embarrassing, yes, but hardly the end of the world. And yet something about that brief encounter had left her feeling oddly shaken. Little did Maya know that on the other side of the door, Louis Kane stood, staring at where she had been, his phone forgotten in his hand. For the first time in 2 years, he felt something crack in the careful walls he'd built around himself. There had been something about her, the genuine embarrassment in her apology, the quiet dignity in how she'd carried herself, the flash of fire in her dark eyes when they'd met his. Something real in a world that often felt anything but. He shook his head, turning back to the windows and the glittering Manhattan skyline beyond. He had a merger to focus on, a company to run. He didn't have time for distractions, no matter how intriguing they might be. But as Louis returned to his calls, and Maya finally found her way to the mixer, neither could quite shake the feeling that something had shifted in the universe. Like the first domino tipping, setting off a chain reaction that would change everything. The intern mixer was everything Maya had expected. Young designers networking over cocktails, senior partners making speeches about opportunity and excellence. She smiled and mingled, discussing her portfolio and her passion for sustainable design, but her mind kept drifting back to room 2010, to storm cloud eyes and an almost smile that had made her forget how to breathe. "Maya, there you are." A familiar voice cut through her thoughts. Olivia Chen, her fellow intern, appeared at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "Where were you? I was starting to think you'd gotten lost." "You have no idea," Maya muttered, accepting one of the glasses gratefully. "I actually ended up on the wrong floor." "Only you," Olivia laughed, but her expression turned serious as she leaned in closer. "Hey, have you heard? Apparently Louis Kane is staying at the hotel." "Who?" "Seriously? Louis Kane, the CEO of Kane Enterprises? They say he's here finalizing some huge merger." Olivia's eyes sparkled with gossip. God, what I wouldn't give to run into him in an elevator. Maya took a large sip of champagne, trying to ignore the way her pulse had quickened. It couldn't be. Could it? The man in 2010 had looked powerful, yes. But a CEO? "What does he look like?" she asked, aiming for casual and missing by a mile. "Tall, dark and loaded," Olivia grinned. "But good luck getting close. They say he's been practically a recluse since his ex cheated on him with his best friend. Major trust issues now, apparently." Maya's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. The luxury suite, the air of authority, the hint of sadness in those storm cloud eyes. "Oh God," she whispered into her champagne. "What?" "Nothing." Maya forced a smile. "Just remembered I forgot to submit that typography assignment." But, as the evening wore on, she couldn't stop thinking about her embarrassing entrance into the wrong room. If that really had been Louis Kane. She groaned internally. Of all the rooms in all the hotels in all of New York City, she had to walk into his. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor. Maya just wasn't sure if she was ready for the punchline. 3 days after the mixer, Maya sat at her intern desk at Newman and Brooks, trying to focus on the sustainable packaging design spread across her screen. The memory of her encounter at the plaza kept intruding, making her second-guess every stroke of her digital pen. It didn't help that Olivia had spent the past few days sending her articles about Louis Kane and his latest business ventures. "Earth to Maya," Olivia's voice cut through her thoughts. "The client meeting's starting in 5 minutes. Natalie wants all the interns there to observe." Maya saved her work and smoothed down her modest navy dress, a thrift store find she'd altered herself. The creative director, Natalie Walsh, had a reputation for being brilliant but demanding. Even the senior designers seemed to hold their breath when she entered a room. The conference room was already packed when Maya and Olivia slipped in, finding spots along the back wall. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan sprawled out like a concrete garden, glass towers reaching toward the cloudy October sky. "Ladies and gentlemen," Natalie's crisp voice commanded attention as she strode in, her silver hair swept into an elegant twist. "As you know, we're pitching for the Kane Enterprises rebranding project. Their CEO will be joining us today to—" The door opened. Maya's heart stopped. Louis Kane walked in, followed by 2 executives in equally expensive suits. He looked even more imposing in daylight, power contained in perfect tailoring, authority in every measured step. His eyes swept the room in a practiced gesture, but when they landed on Maya, they paused for a fraction of a second. Recognition flickered across his face, quickly masked by professional neutrality, but Maya saw it, and the knowledge that he remembered her sent an electric current down her spine. "Mr. Kane?" Natalie stepped forward to shake his hand. "Thank you for making time for us today." "The pleasure's mine," Lewis replied, his voice carrying that same deep resonance Maya remembered. Kane Enterprises values innovation, and Newman & Brooks has an impressive track record. As the presentation began, Maya tried to focus on the designs being shown, on Natalie's pitch about modern minimalism and sustainable practices, but her awareness of Lewis's presence was overwhelming. He sat at the head of the table, asking intelligent questions about color psychology and brand evolution. Occasionally, his gaze would drift to where she stood, and each time, Maya felt the air grow thicker. "We're particularly excited about our fresh perspective on corporate responsibility," Natalie was saying. "Maya, would you bring up the eco-friendly packaging concepts?" Maya's head snapped up. This wasn't part of the plan. Interns were supposed to observe, not participate. But Natalie was looking at her expectantly, and Lewis had turned his full attention to her, those storm cloud eyes intense with interest. Taking a deep breath, Maya walked to the presentation screen. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled up her designs, but when she began speaking about sustainable materials and innovative folding patterns, her voice grew steady with passion. "The key is making sustainability beautiful," she explained, clicking through her renderings. "It's not enough for packaging to be eco-friendly. It needs to tell a story to make people feel something. Every unboxing should be an experience that reminds consumers they're part of something bigger than themselves." The room was silent when she finished. Maya dared to look at Lewis, finding him leaning forward slightly, his expression unreadable, but focused entirely on her. "Impressive," he said quietly. "How long have you been with Newman & Brooks?" 3 months, Maya answered. "As an intern." Something sparked in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, or approval. Before he could respond, Natalie smoothly took control of the presentation again, but the energy in the room had shifted. After the meeting, Maya gathered her notes with trembling hands. Most of the room had cleared out, but she could feel Lewis, lingering, speaking quietly with Natalie near the door. "That was incredible," Olivia whispered, squeezing her arm. "But why didn't you tell me you'd been working on concepts for Kane Enterprises?" "I didn't know," Maya admitted. "I've been developing those ideas for weeks, but I had no idea they were for this pitch." "Well, Lewis Kane couldn't take his eyes off you." Olivia cut off abruptly, her eyes widening at something over Maya's shoulder. "Miss Soares?" Maya turned to find Lewis standing there, his presence somehow making the spacious conference room feel smaller. "Mr. Kane," she managed, acutely aware of Olivia's barely suppressed squeal beside her. "Your concepts are exactly what we've been looking for," he said. "Fresh, innovative, but grounded in real environmental impact." He paused, those eyes searching her face. "Though I must admit, this is a less surprising entrance than our last meeting." Heat rushed to Maya's cheeks. "About that. No need to apologize again." Was that amusement in his voice? "Actually, I'd like to discuss your ideas further. Would you be available for a meeting next week to explore how your concepts could be implemented across our product lines?" Maya's heart thundered. I'd need to check with Natalie." "Already cleared it with her," Lewis said smoothly. "My assistant will email you the details." He held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "Until then, Miss Soares." With a slight nod, he turned and left the conference room, leaving Maya standing in a daze. "Oh my God!" Olivia grabbed her arm. "What was that about meeting him before?" "Maya Soares, you've been holding out on me." But Maya barely heard her friend's questions. Her mind was spinning with the implications of what had just happened. A private meeting with Lewis Kane to discuss her designs. It seemed impossible, yet the memory of his intense focus when she'd presented, the way he'd sought her out afterward. Later that night, in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, Maya sat on her fire escape with a cup of tea, watching the city lights twinkle across the river. The day felt surreal, like something out of a dream or a movie. The email from Lewis's assistant sat unopened in her inbox, confirming a meeting for next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How was your day, baby?" Maya stared at the screen, wondering how to even begin explaining. How do you tell your mother that you accidentally walked into a billionaire's hotel room, then ended up presenting your designs to him 3 days later? That the way he looked. Had you made your knees weak and your heart race, even though he represented everything you'd always been wary of? Power, privilege, a world so far removed from your own? Interesting, she typed back finally. Really interesting. Setting her phone aside, Maya leaned back against the cold metal of the fire escape. The autumn air was crisp with possibility, carrying the faint scent of someone's dinner cooking and the eternal symphony of city traffic below. She thought of Lewis's eyes when he'd recognized her, the subtle softness that had crept into his voice when he praised her work. Olivia's words from the mixer echoed in her mind. Major trust issues now, apparently. Maya could see it in him, the careful distance he maintained, the walls behind his eyes, and yet something had made him single her out, ask for a private meeting. This is strictly professional, she told herself firmly. He's interested in the designs, not you. But as she climbed back into her apartment, Maya couldn't quite convince her heart to believe it. The universe had thrown them together twice, now each time sending ripples through her carefully planned life. She couldn't shake the feeling that Wednesday's meeting would be more than just a discussion about sustainable packaging. In his penthouse office across the city, Lewis Kane stood at his window, looking out at the same skyline. Maya's presentation kept playing in his mind, not just her innovative designs, but the way her eyes had lit up when she talked about making sustainability beautiful. There had been no pretense there, no carefully calculated pitch, just pure passion and talent. He picked up his phone, hovering over the email his assistant had sent, confirming the meeting with Maya. Was he making a mistake? The last time he'd let someone past his professional walls, Lewis set the phone down without opening the email. Wednesday would be strictly about business, he told himself. Nothing more. He couldn't afford distractions, not with the merger, hanging in the balance. But even as he turned back to his work, he knew he was lying to himself. There was something about Maya Suarez that had gotten under his skin, making him question the walls he'd built so carefully. And on Wednesday he would have to face that something head-on. The city hummed below, indifferent to the tension building between two souls on opposite sides of Manhattan, but fate, having brought them together twice already, was far from finished. With Maya Suarez and Lewis Kane, Wednesday arrived with the kind of autumn rain that turned Manhattan into a blur of umbrellas and taxi lights. Maya stood in the towering lobby of Kane Enterprises, water dripping from her pea coat, despite her best efforts with a collapsible umbrella. The security guard eyed her with mild suspicion until she mentioned her appointment with Mr. Kane, at which point his demeanor shifted to barely concealed surprise. The elevator ride to the top floor gave Maya time to smooth her rain-dampened curls and straighten her dark green dress, another thrift store find she'd stayed up late altering. Her portfolio, safely waterproofed in her bag, contained expanded versions of her sustainable packaging designs, along with new concepts she'd developed over the past week. Miss Suarez, a polished assistant, greeted her as the elevator doors opened. "Mr. Kane is ready for you. This way, please." Lewis's office was exactly what Maya would have expected, and somehow nothing like it at all. The space was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a dramatic view of rain-swept Manhattan. But instead of the cold modernism she'd anticipated, the room held unexpected warmth. Leather-bound books lined one wall, their spines well worn. A collection of black and white photographs featuring New York streetscapes hung on another. The furniture was sleek, but chosen for comfort as much as style. Lewis stood as she entered, and Maya's breath caught. He wore no suit jacket today, just a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. The casual elegance of it felt almost intimate. "Miss Suarez," he said, coming around his desk. "Thank you for braving the weather to join me." "Maya," she corrected softly. "Please." Something flickered in his eyes. "Maya." He gestured to a sitting area near the windows. "Would you like coffee? Tea?" "Coffee would be wonderful, thank you." She needed something to do with her hands. Lewis pressed a button on his desk. "Andrea, could you bring in coffee for 2? He turned back to Maya. "How do you take it?" "Black is fine." A purist, he noted, the ghost of a smile playing at his lips. I should have guessed. Maya set her bag down and took a seat in one of the leather chairs, trying to calm her racing heart. Louis sat across from her, his posture relaxed but his eyes intent. "I've been thinking about your presentation," he began. "The way you approached sustainability, not as a checkbox to tick, but as an integral part of the brand experience. It's exactly the direction Kane Enterprises needs to move in." "Thank you," Maya said, warmth blooming in her chest at his words. "I actually developed some additional concepts if you'd like to see them." Louis nodded, and Maya pulled out her portfolio. As she spread the designs across the coffee table, between them, Andrea arrived with their coffee. The rich aroma filled the air, mixing with the petrichor drifting up from the rain-soaked city below. "These are remarkable," Louis said, studying a rendering of packaging that unfolded like origami to reveal its contents. The attention to detail, the way each piece tells a story. He looked up at her. "How did you become interested in sustainable design?" Maya took a sip of coffee, gathering her thoughts. "I grew up in a small town in New Jersey. My mom worked 2 jobs to support us after my dad passed away. She taught me that everything valuable takes effort, whether it's earning money or protecting the environment." She traced the rim of her coffee cup. "We didn't have much, but she always found creative ways to reuse things, to make something beautiful out of what others might throw away." When she looked up, Louis was watching her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. "That's rare," he said quietly. "Most people I meet in this industry are chasing trends, but you're chasing something real." "What about you?" Maya asked, surprising herself with her boldness. "What are you chasing, Mr. Kane?" "Louis," he corrected, echoing her earlier request. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the rain-muted city beyond the windows seemed to fade away. "Legacy, I suppose," he continued, breaking the spell. "My father built this company from nothing. When he died 5 years ago, I inherited not just his business, but his vision. Sometimes I wonder if I'm living up to it." The vulnerability in his admission caught Maya off guard. This wasn't the polished CEO from the conference room. This was someone real, someone who carried weights she hadn't expected. "From what I've read," she said carefully, "you've taken Kane Enterprises in new directions, expanded into sustainable technology, ethical manufacturing. You've been researching me." There was that almost smile again. Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I like to be prepared." "And what else did your research tell you?" The question hung in the air between them. Maya thought of the articles Olivia had sent her, the gossip about his ex-fiancée's betrayal, the way he'd withdrawn from the social scene. "Nothing that matters," she said finally. "I prefer to form my own impressions." Something shifted. In Louis's expression, surprise maybe, or appreciation, he leaned forward slightly. "And what impression have you formed so far?" Maya's heart thundered. "That you're more interested in doing what's right than what's easy. That you care about more than just profit margins." She met his gaze steadily. "That maybe you've built some walls, but they're made of glass, transparent to anyone who takes the time to really look." The silence that followed was electric. Louis stared at her like he was seeing something new, something that both intrigued and unsettled him. Outside, thunder rumbled distantly. "You're very perceptive," he said finally, his voice low. "Or very brave, I'm not sure which." "Maybe both," Maya smiled. "Maybe neither. I just say what I see." Louis stood abruptly, walking to the windows. "Kane Enterprises is launching a new sustainable luxury line next quarter. We need someone to head up the packaging design team, someone with fresh vision and genuine commitment to sustainability." He turned back to face her. "I'd like to offer you the position." Maya's breath caught. "But I'm just an intern." "You're far more than that." Louis's eyes held hers. "You have talent, passion, and integrity, rare qualities in this industry. The position would mean leaving Newman & Brooks, of course, but it would be a significant step up. Full creative control over the project, your own team." Maya's mind raced. The opportunity was incredible, career-making even. But something felt off. "Why me, really?" Louis was quiet for a moment. "Because when you walked into my Hotel room by mistake. You apologized sincerely but didn't grovel. Because when you presented your designs, you spoke about beauty and responsibility with equal passion. Because you see through glass walls and aren't afraid to say so. He paused. But mostly because you're exactly what this company needs. Maya stood, moving to join him at the windows. The rain had softened to a gentle patter, leaving trails like tears on the glass. Their reflections stood side by side, overlapping with the city beyond. I need time to think about it, she said softly. Of course. Louis turned to face her, and suddenly they were standing very close. Maya could see the flecks of silver in his storm cloud eyes, smell the subtle notes of his cologne. Take the rest of the week. We can meet again on Monday to discuss your decision. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The air between them felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. I should go, she managed finally, stepping back. Thank you for the coffee and the opportunity. Louis walked her to the door, their steps silent on the thick carpet. At the threshold he paused. Maya? She turned back, her hand on the doorframe. Whatever you decide, he said quietly. I'm glad you walked into the wrong room that night. The words followed Maya into the elevator, echoing in her mind as she stepped out into the rain-washed street. The job offer was incredible, potentially life-changing. But it wasn't the opportunity that made her heart race and her skin tingle. It was the way Louis had looked at her when she spoke about glass walls, the vulnerability in his voice when he mentioned his father, the electricity in the air when they stood together at the windows. Maya lifted her face to the gentle rain, letting it cool her flushed cheeks. She had decisions to make, about her career, about crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed, about walls of glass and what lay beyond them. But for now, she let herself feel everything, the rain, the lingering warmth of coffee, and the memory of storm cloud eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. He offered you what? Olivia's voice rose above the weekend brunch crowd at their favorite Brooklyn cafe. Several heads turned their way, and Maya sank lower in her chair, grateful for the relative privacy of their corner table. Keep it down, she hissed, stirring her now cold coffee. I haven't told anyone else yet, not even Natalie. But Maya, this is huge. Olivia leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Head of packaging design for Kane Enterprises' new sustainable line. That's not just a job offer, that's a fairy tale. Maya sighed, pushing her plate of half-eaten avocado toast aside. She'd barely slept since Wednesday's meeting, turning the offer over and over in her mind. It feels too good to be true. Or maybe it feels too good because it is true. Olivia studied her friend's face. Unless there's something else bothering you about it. Heat crept up Maya's neck as she remembered standing with Louis by those rain-streaked windows, the electricity in the air between them. It's complicated. Understanding dawned in Olivia's eyes. Oh my God, something happened in that meeting, didn't it? Nothing happened, Maya protested quickly. We just talked about design, about sustainability, about... She trailed off, remembering the vulnerability in his voice when he spoke about his father. About? Olivia prompted. Life, I guess. He's different when it's just... Maya caught herself. It doesn't matter. Taking the job would be professional suicide. How do you figure that? Think about it. I'd be leaving a prestigious internship at Newman and Brooks to work directly for Louis Kane, a man I barely know. Everyone would assume... She couldn't finish the sentence. That you slept your way into the position? Olivia's bluntness made Maya wince. So what? Let them talk. Your work speaks for itself. Does it? Maya ran a hand through her curls in frustration. I'm 22, Liv. I've been in the industry for 3 months. On paper, I'm nowhere near qualified for this position. Maybe that's exactly why. You're perfect for it. Olivia reached across the table to squeeze her hand. You're not jaded yet. You still believe in making real change. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number lit up her screen. Coffee? There's something you should know about the position. And Louis, Abigail Warner. Maya's blood ran cold. She'd seen that name in the articles about Louis's past. His former fiancée, the one who'd betrayed him. Maya, what's wrong? You... Look like you've seen a ghost. Wordlessly, Maya showed Olivia the text. Her friend's eyes widened. Are you going to meet her? Maya stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the reply button. I should at least hear what she has to say, right? 2 hours later, Maya sat in a quiet cafe in the West Village, her hands wrapped around a cup of green tea she hadn't touched. The door chimed, and a striking woman in her mid-30s walked in, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. Maya? The woman's smile was practiced, professional. Thank you for meeting me. I'm Abigail. Up close, Abigail. Warner was even more intimidating. The kind of polished beauty that came from old money and good genes. She ordered an oat milk latte before settling across from Maya. I'll get straight to the point, Abigail said, her voice carrying the subtle accent of someone who'd attended expensive boarding schools. Lewis offered you a position at Kane Enterprises. It wasn't a question. Maya nodded anyway. Let me guess, head of the new Sustainable Packaging Division. Abigail's smile turned knowing. Complete creative control, your own team? Salary that would make your student loans disappear? How did you? Because 2 years ago he offered me a similar position. Different department, same story. Abigail leaned back, studying Maya, with cool blue eyes. Lewis has a pattern. He finds young, talented women with big dreams and unconventional backgrounds, offers them opportunities that seem too good to refuse, makes them feel special, understood. Maya's stomach churned. That's not what happened, Abigail continued as if she hadn't spoken. Let me guess. Rain against the windows? Coffee in his office? Some personal revelation about his father? Or his vision for the company? Each word hit Maya like a physical blow. She thought of the intimacy of that meeting, how real it had felt. Had it all been calculated? Why are you telling me this? Abigail's expression softened slightly. Because you seem like a good person, Maya. Talented, genuine. The kind of person Lewis is drawn to because he wants to believe he can still be that way too. She stirred her latte. But Lewis Kane is poison. Everything he touches turns toxic eventually. Trust me, I learned the hard way. You're the one who cheated on him, Maya said quietly, finding her voice. With his best friend. Something flashed in Abigail's eyes, pain maybe, or anger. Is that what the articles say? That I'm the villain of the story? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Did they mention how Lewis worked 80-hour weeks? How he'd cancel plans last minute for emergency meetings that somehow always involved his attractive young VP of marketing? How he'd make me feel crazy for questioning anything? Maya's head spun. This wasn't the Lewis she knew, the man who spoke passionately about sustainability, who showed vulnerability when talking about his father's legacy. Why should I believe you? You shouldn't, Abigail said simply. You should do your own research. Talk to other women who've worked closely with him. Look into why the last 3 heads of major projects all left within a year. She stood, gathering her designer bag. Or take the job and find out for yourself. Just don't say no one. Warned you. She left Maya sitting there, her tea now completely cold. Outside, the October sun had disappeared behind heavy clouds, casting the street in premature twilight. Maya's phone buzzed again. This time it was Lewis. Hope you're having a good weekend. Looking forward to our meeting tomorrow, L. Such. A simple message, yet now it carried the weight of Abigail's warnings. Maya thought of Lewis's storm cloud eyes, the way he'd looked at her when she talked about glass walls. Had it all been an act? A pattern he'd perfected over years of practice? But something else nagged at her. Abigail's story was too perfect, too practiced, like she'd told it many times before. And why reach out now, 2 years after their breakup? Maya's phone buzzed again, Olivia this time. Well? What did the ex say? Standing up, Maya left her untouched tea on the table. She needed to think, to clear her head. The job offer deadline loomed tomorrow, and now she had more questions than answers. As she walked through the darkening streets of Manhattan, Maya's mind kept returning to that moment in Lewis's office, standing together at the windows. The vulnerability in his voice had felt real. The electricity between them had felt real. But maybe that was exactly the problem. Maybe she wanted it to be real so badly that she was blind to the red flags Abigail had pointed out. Tomorrow she would have to face Lewis again. Look into those storm cloud eyes and try to separate truth from manipulation, genuine connection from practiced charm. The first drops of rain began to fall, and Maya turned her face up to them, letting them mix with the tears she hadn't realized were falling. She had decisions to make, about the job, about Lewis, about who to trust and what to believe. But for now she walked through the rain-slicked streets of New York, a city built on dreams and deceptions, wondering if she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, or let fear talk her out of the greatest opportunity she'd ever been offered. Monday morning dawned cold and clear, the kind of autumn day that made Manhattan's glass towers gleam like diamonds. Maya stood in front of Kane Enterprises for the second time in a week, but everything felt different now. Abigail's words echoed in her mind as she rode the elevator to the top floor. This time, when Andrea led her to Lewis's office, Maya noticed things she'd missed before. The expensive art on the walls, all by female artists. The photographs of New York streetscapes, all capturing solitary moments, empty spaces in a crowded city. Even his book collection seemed to tell a story now. Biographies of successful men, guides to building empires. Lewis stood at his desk reviewing documents. He looked up when she entered, and Maya's heart traitorously skipped a beat. He wore a charcoal suit today, the color making his eyes seem stormier than ever. "Maya," he smiled, genuine warmth in his voice. "I hope you had a good weekend." "Interesting would be a better word," she said carefully, remaining standing even when he gestured to the sitting area. "I had an enlightening conversation with Abigail Warner." The change in Lewis's expression was subtle but immediate. Something shuttered behind his eyes, and his posture stiffened slightly. "I see. Do you?" Maya's voice trembled slightly, but she pressed on. "She told me some interesting things about your pattern with young, talented women. About how you offer them incredible opportunities, make them feel special." Lewis's jaw tightened. "And you believed her. Should I not? The last 3 project heads who left within a year, were they all young women too? Did you make them the same promises?" "Is that what Abigail told you?" Lewis moved around his desk, but Maya stepped back, maintaining distance between them. "Did she also tell you how she used company information to help her lover, my supposed best friend, start a competing business? How she played the victim while systematically betraying everything we'd built?" "This isn't about Abigail," Maya said, though her certainty wavered at the raw pain in his voice. "This is about whether I can trust that this job offer is real, or if it's just part of your pattern." "My pattern," Lewis laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to know about patterns, Maya? Let's talk about how every person I've trusted has had an agenda, how every relationship I've built has been leveraged for personal gain." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "Do you know why I offered you the job? Because I'm young and talented with an unconventional background?" Maya quoted Abigail bitterly. "Because you walked into my hotel room by mistake and apologized without trying to turn it into an opportunity," Lewis said quietly. "Because you talked about sustainability like it was a calling, not a marketing strategy. Because when you look at me, you see past the CEO to the person I'm trying to be." Maya's heart thundered. "And how many others have you said that to?" Pain flashed across Lewis's face. "None." He took a step toward her. "Maya, everything about our interactions has been genuine. Yes, I've had project heads leave. Some were poached by competitors. Others couldn't handle the pressure. Yes, some were women. In this industry, that's not unusual." "And the VP of marketing?" Maya asked, remembering Abigail's accusation. "The one you had emergency meetings with? Diane Rodriguez? She's been with the company for 15 years, is happily married, and was my father's most trusted advisor." Lewis's eyes held hers. "Abigail saw threats everywhere, because she was the one planning to betray me. She's reaching out now because she heard about our sustainable luxury line. Her company is struggling, and she's trying to sabotage us before we launch." Maya felt the ground shifting under her feet. Everything seemed simultaneously clearer and more confused. "Why didn't you tell me about her company when you offered me the job?" Because I didn't want her to be part of this conversation, because for the first time in 2 years, I met someone who made me feel like I could trust. Again. Lewis's voice dropped lower. Because when I'm with you, I don't think about the past, I think about possibilities. The sincerity in his voice made Maya's chest ache. She thought about their meeting last week, the shared coffee, the genuine conversations, the electricity in the air between them. Had she let Abigail poison something real? I don't know what to believe, she whispered. Believe in your instincts, Lewis said softly. The same instincts that made you see through my walls. That made you brave enough to tell me what you saw. He paused. The job offer stands on its own merits. Your talent and vision are exactly what this project needs. But if you're asking if there's something more between us, yes. And it terrifies me as much as it terrifies you. Maya looked. Up at him, really looked. Behind the power and polish, she saw something raw and honest. A man who'd been hurt, who'd built walls to protect himself, but who was willing to risk being vulnerable again. I need time, she said finally. Not just about the job, about everything. Lewis nodded, respecting her space even though she could see how much it cost him. Take all the time you need. The position will remain open until you decide. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision. His eyes held hers. But I hope you'll say yes, not because I want to add you to some pattern, but because I want to break all my patterns with you. Maya turned to leave, her hand on the door handle, when Lewis spoke again. Maya? She looked back. Thank you for coming to me with your concerns instead of just disappearing. It means more than you know. The sincerity in his voice followed her into the elevator, down through the gleaming lobby, and out into the bright October morning. As she walked through Manhattan's busy streets, Maya felt something shift inside her. The doubts Abigail had, planted, weren't completely gone, but they'd lost their sharp edges. Her phone buzzed, Olivia asking for an update. Maya stared at the screen, thinking about patterns and trust, about walls of glass and the courage it takes to see through them. Met with Lewis, she typed finally. Things are complicated. Complicated, but maybe that was okay. Maybe real connections were supposed to be complicated. Maybe real trust had to be built slowly, deliberately, with both parties willing to risk being hurt. Maya found herself at Bryant Park, watching people enjoy the last warm days before winter. A young couple shared coffee on a bench, laughing at some private joke. An old man read a newspaper in the sun. Life went on around her, full of small moments of trust and connection. Her phone buzzed again. Lewis this time. Whatever you decide, know that every word I said was true. No patterns, no games, just truth. L. Maya closed her eyes, letting the autumn sun warm her face. She had decisions to make. About the job, about Lewis, about who she wanted to be, and what she was willing to risk for something real. But for now she sat in the park, holding the possibility of truth and trust in her hands like a delicate bird, wondering if she was brave enough to let it fly. 3 days after her confrontation with Lewis, Maya sat in Natalie Walsh's office, at Newman and Brooks, her resignation letter burning a hole in her bag. The creative director studied her over stylish reading glasses, her expression unreadable. Kane Enterprises, Natalie finally spoke, setting down Maya's letter. Head of Sustainable Packaging Design for their new luxury line? Yes, Maya forced herself to meet her mentor's gaze steadily. I know it seems sudden. It seems calculated, Natalie interrupted, removing her glasses. Lewis Kane doesn't make offers like this to interns without reason. Heat crept up Maya's neck. My work is excellent, yes, but there are senior designers with decades of experience who would kill for this position. Natalie leaned forward. Maya, I've known Lewis for years. He's brilliant, driven, and usually 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Whatever he's offering, make sure you understand the real price. The real price? Maya felt her defenses rise. You think I didn't earn this opportunity? I think you earned his attention, Natalie said carefully. The question is, what kind of attention is it? Before Maya could respond, a commotion erupted in the main office. Through the glass walls of Natalie's office, they could see people gathering around someone's computer screen. Olivia appeared at the door, her face pale. "Maya, you need to see this." The article on the industry news site was already going viral. Kane Enterprises CEO's new muse, rising star or office romance. Beneath the sensational headline was a photo of Maya and Louis standing by his office windows, taken during their last meeting. The intimacy of their body language was undeniable, even if the conversation had been anything but romantic. Anonymous. Sources suggest that Kane's latest project head may be more than just a professional appointment, Maya read, her vision blurring. The young designer, recently an intern at Newman and Brooks, caught the CEO's attention at a luxury hotel. The article went on to quote industry insiders, speculating about their relationship, drawing parallels to other young women who'd held brief positions at Kane Enterprises. There was even a quote from Abigail, expressing concern about Louis's pattern of behavior. "Maya," Olivia touched her arm gently. "I need some air." Maya grabbed her bag, ignoring the whispers and stares as she fled the office. She made it to the building's rooftop garden, a small oasis 15 stories above Manhattan. The autumn wind whipped at her hair as she gripped the railing, trying to steady her breathing. Her phone buzzed insistently. Messages from Olivia, from her mother, from college friends who'd seen the article, and then Louis. "My office, please, we need to talk." Maya's first instinct was to run, back to New Jersey, back to the safety of her small-town life where scandals didn't go viral and hearts didn't get crushed by storm cloud eyes. But she thought of Louis's vulnerability during their last conversation, the raw honesty in his voice when he talked about patterns and trust. 40 minutes later, she stood in his office again. Louis paced by the windows, his usual composure fractured. He turned when she entered, and the pain in his eyes made her heart clench. "Maya, I'm so sorry." He moved toward her, then stopped. Himself. "I should have anticipated this. Abigail's company is struggling. This was her way of striking back. Using you to get to me." "Using me?" Maya's laugh was hollow. "I think I did that all on my own. The naive intern who thought she could step into your world without consequences. This isn't your fault, isn't it?" She met his gaze. "Tell me something, Louis. If I hadn't confronted you about Abigail, if we hadn't had that intense conversation, by these windows, would that photographer have had anything to capture?" Louis was quiet for a moment. "No," he admitted finally, "but that doesn't make what happened between us any less real." "Real?" Maya gestured at the city beyond his windows. "Look at your world, Louis. Everything's glass and steel and power. Place, I was stupid to think I could belong here." "You do belong here." He stepped closer, and this time Maya didn't back away. "Your talent, your vision, your integrity, that's exactly what this company needs. What I need." "And what exactly do you need from me, Louis?" The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. "Everything," he said softly. "Nothing. Whatever you're willing to give." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I know the timing is terrible. I know this looks like it's confirming every rumor, every suspicion, but I can't pretend I don't feel something real for you, something that terrifies me precisely because it's not part of any pattern or plan." Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I can't take the job now, you know that." "Why not?" "Because of what people might think. Since when do you let others' judgments define you?" "Since those judgments started questioning everything." "I've worked for," Maya's voice broke. "I wanted this position because of my talent, my vision. Now everyone will think." "Let them think what they want," Louis said fiercely. "We know the truth." "Do we?" Maya wrapped her arms around herself. 3 days ago, I wasn't even sure what the truth was. Now there's an article suggesting I slept my way into a position I haven't even accepted yet. Louis's expression darkened. "I'll have my lawyers." "No," Maya shook her head. "No lawyers, no statements, no damage control. That will only make it worse." She took a deep breath. "I need to go back to Newman and Brooks, withdraw my resignation, try to salvage what's left of my reputation." "Maya, please." The vulnerability in Louis's voice made her heart crack. Don't let Abigail win like this. This isn't about Abigail. Maya met his eyes one last time, memorizing the storms that raged in them. This is about me needing to prove myself on my own terms. Without complications, without me, Lewis finished quietly. Maya nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She turned to leave, but Lewis's voice stopped her. I won't accept your withdrawal, he said. The position remains yours whenever you're ready, whether that's next week, next month, or next year. Maya paused at the door, her hand on the handle. Goodbye, Lewis. She walked out of Kane Enterprises for what felt like the last time, autumn sunlight catching on the tears she finally let fall. Her phone buzzed again. Olivia, offering to bring ice cream and wine to her apartment. On my way home, Maya texted back. And Liv, thank you for being there. As her subway car rattled toward Brooklyn, Maya thought about glass walls and steel towers, about patterns broken and truths revealed. She thought about Lewis's eyes when he'd said everything and nothing in the same breath. Maybe some dreams were worth waiting for. Maybe some connections needed time to prove themselves real. Maybe sometimes walking away was the bravest way to hold on to what mattered. The city rolled past outside the subway windows, indifferent to the small heartbreaks and big decisions that shaped the lives within it. Maya leaned her head against the cool glass, letting the rhythm of the train carry her home, away from storm cloud eyes and viral scandals, toward a future she'd have to rebuild on her own terms. 2 weeks passed, like a blur of grey November. Days. Maya threw herself into her work at Newman and Brooks, arriving early and staying late, as if extra hours could erase the whispers that still followed her through the office. The article had faded from the headlines, but its impact lingered like a shadow. You're overthinking the lines, Natalie said one evening, studying Maya's latest designs spread across the conference room table. Your work used to flow naturally. Now it feels constrained. Maya stared at her drawings, seeing the truth in Natalie's words. Every curve, every choice felt weighted with second guesses. I'll revise them. That's not... Natalie sighed, settling into a chair beside her. Maya, you've been working yourself to exhaustion. Maybe it's time to talk about what really happened with Lewis Kane. Nothing happened, Maya said automatically, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. Nothing that matters anymore. Clearly, it matters. Natalie's voice was gentle but firm. Your talent hasn't diminished, but your confidence has, and that's exactly what they wanted. Maya looked up sharply. They? Did you really think Abigail Warner acted alone? Natalie pulled out her tablet, bringing up financial records. Kane Enterprises' sustainable luxury line threatens multiple competitors. The timing of that article, the anonymous sources, it was a coordinated attack. Maya's heart raced as she studied the documents. Shell companies, strategic investments, a web of connections leading back to not just Abigail's company, but 3 others, all standing to lose market share when Kane Enterprises launched their new line. How did you get this? I've been in this industry for 20 years. I have my sources. Natalie's eyes held a mix of sympathy and steel. They didn't just want to stop you from taking the position. They wanted to discredit you, make an example of what happens when someone threatens their market share. Why are you showing me this now? Because you deserve to know the truth, and because Kane Enterprises' board meeting is tomorrow. Natalie slid a folder across the table. They're voting on whether to proceed with the sustainable luxury line. Without a strong creative lead, the project might be delayed or shelved entirely. Maya's fingers trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were more documents, proof of coordinated market manipulation, whisper campaigns against Kane Enterprises, all traced back to the same group of competitors. Lewis must know about this, she said, but even as the words left her mouth, she wasn't sure. Lewis Kane is brilliant with business strategy, but he has blind spots, especially when it comes to matters of trust. Natalie stood, gathering her things. The question is, what are you going to do with this information? After Natalie left, Maya sat alone in the darkening conference room, city lights twinkling beyond the windows. Her phone felt heavy in her hand, as she pulled up her messages with Lewis. 2 weeks of silence stared back at her. She thought of him in his office, offering to keep the position open, refusing to let her withdraw completely. Had he known then, what forces were aligned against them? Had his insistence been about more than just his feelings for her? The decision crystallized in her mind with surprising clarity. Maya gathered the documents and headed for the elevator. The board meeting was at 9 tomorrow morning. She had work to do. Dawn found her in a coffee shop near Kane Enterprises, reviewing her presentation one last time. She'd spent the night compiling evidence, creating visual aids, building an irrefutable case. Now she just had to get past security. "Maya?" She looked up to find Andrea, Lewis's assistant, staring at her in surprise. The woman clutched a carrier of coffee cups, presumably for the board meeting. "Andrea, I need your help." Maya stood gathering her materials. "I have to get into that board meeting." Andrea hesitated. Mr. Kane gave strict instructions about the meeting. No interruptions, no exceptions. "This can't wait." Maya met the assistant's eyes. "Please, it's about more than just me and Lewis now." Something in her voice must have convinced Andrea. 10 minutes later, Maya stood in the elevator, her heart pounding as they ascended to the top floor. Andrea had given her a visitor's badge and directions to the boardroom, along with a warning, "The vote happens at 10. Whatever you're planning, do it before then." The boardroom doors were closed when Maya arrived, voices murmuring inside. She thought of Lewis behind those doors, fighting for his vision while unseen forces worked to undermine him. Forces that had used her as a pawn in their game. Taking a deep breath, Maya pushed the doors open. 15 heads turned to stare at her. Lewis sat at the head of the table, his expression shifting from shock to something else as he recognized her. The storm in his eyes had darkened during their time apart, shadows deepening beneath them. "I apologize for the interruption," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But there's something the board needs to see before they vote." "Miss Soares," one of the older board members frowned, "this is a closed meeting." "Yes, it is, and what I'm about to show you explains why." Maya moved to the presentation screen, plugging in her laptop. 2 weeks ago, an article was published suggesting impropriety in my potential appointment at Kane Enterprises. That article was part of a coordinated effort by competitors to derail the sustainable luxury line. The room erupted in murmurs as Maya began her presentation. She walked them through the evidence, the shell companies, the market manipulation, the coordinated media attacks. With each revelation, she felt stronger, more certain. "They didn't just target me," she concluded. "They targeted this company's integrity, its vision for the future. They used my relationship with Mr. Kane, professional or otherwise, as a weapon, hoping to destroy both our reputations and this project." Lewis hadn't moved during her entire presentation, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. Now he spoke, his voice carefully controlled. "How did you uncover this?" "I had help," Maya admitted. "But that's not what matters. What matters is that I'm not here to defend my reputation or ask for anything. I'm here because I believe in this project. In sustainable luxury that doesn't cost the earth. In breaking patterns, both personal and professional." She turned to face the board fully. "Vote however you choose, but do it based on the project's merits, not on manufactured scandals or market manipulation." Silence fell over the room. Maya could feel Lewis's eyes on her, could almost taste the electricity in the air between them. Finally, one of the board members spoke. "Perhaps we should review Miss Soares' evidence before proceeding with the vote." Maya gathered her things, knowing her part was done. At the door, she paused, finally letting herself look directly at Lewis. The storms in his eyes had calmed, replaced by something that looked almost like pride. "Thank you," he said simply. Maya nodded, slipping out of the boardroom. She made it to the elevator before her hands started shaking. The weight of the past 2 weeks, the scandal, the whispers, the separation, crashed over her like a wave. Her phone buzzed as she reached the lobby. A text from Natalie. "Well done." Maya stepped out into the November morning, letting the cold air clear her head. She'd done what she came to do. The rest was up to the board and to Lewis. As she walked toward the subway, Maya felt lighter somehow. She'd faced her fears, defended her integrity, and maybe, just maybe, helped protect something bigger than herself. Whether or not she ever took the position at Kane Enterprises, she'd proven that she belonged in this world of glass towers and power plays. Her phone buzzed again. Lewis, this time. "The vote's been delayed pending investigation of your evidence. We need to talk, please." Maya stared at the message, feeling the familiar pull of storm cloud eyes and unspoken possibilities. But this time, the fear was gone. Whatever came next, she'd face it on her own terms. Looking up at Kane Enterprises gleaming in the morning sun, Maya smiled. Sometimes the bravest thing wasn't walking away. Sometimes it was walking back in, head held high, ready to fight for what you believed in, whether that was sustainable luxury lines or second chances at trust. The sky darkened early on November evenings in New York, and tonight the heavens seemed especially restless. Maya stood at her tiny apartment's window, watching lightning flicker between buildings. Lewis's text from that morning still burned in her mind. "We need to talk. Please." She'd responded with a simple, "When and where?" His answer had surprised. "Try your territory this time. There's a small coffee shop in Brooklyn, Bean and Barrel, 8 p.m. Now, as thunder rolled overhead, Maya checked her reflection one last time. She'd chosen a simple emerald sweater dress, comfortable yet polished, like armor for whatever conversation awaited. The shop was only 2 blocks from her apartment, but she grabbed an umbrella anyway. The storm felt ready to break at any moment. Bean and Barrel was her sanctuary, a cozy space with exposed brick walls and mismatched vintage furniture. Tonight, the rain-streaked windows and warm lighting made it feel especially intimate. Maya's heart stopped when she saw Lewis already, there sitting in a corner booth. He'd shed his usual corporate armor. The charcoal sweater and dark jeans made him look younger, more vulnerable somehow. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, a nervous habit she'd noticed during their previous encounters. "Hi," she said softly, sliding into the booth across from him. Lewis looked up, and the intensity in his eyes took her breath away. "Maya." He pushed a steaming mug toward her. "I ordered for you. Oat milk latte with an extra shot, right?" The fact that he remembered her coffee order shouldn't have made her heart flutter, but it did. "Thank you." "No," Lewis shook his head. Are you? What you did at the board meeting is that you didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Maya wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "They tried to use me to hurt you, to hurt the whole project. I couldn't let that stand." "How did you figure it out?" "Natalie helped. She's known about Abigail's connections for a while, been gathering evidence." Maya paused. "Why didn't you see it? The coordinated attacks, the market manipulation?" Lewis was quiet for a moment, watching rain trace patterns on the window. "Because I was too focused on personal betrayal to see the professional one. After Abigail, I built walls to protect myself from emotional manipulation. But those same walls made me blind to strategic threats. And now? Now the board is investigating everything. 3 companies are already facing potential SEC investigations." His fingers tapped restlessly on his coffee cup. "But that's not why I asked to meet you here." Thunder crashed outside, making them both jump slightly. The storm was directly overhead now, and the cafe's lights flickered. "Why did you ask to meet?" Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I need you to know something." Lewis leaned forward, his eyes holding hers. "The position I offered you, it was never about manipulation or patterns or anything else," Abigail suggested. "It was about recognizing something rare, someone who could see through walls, who wasn't afraid to speak truth to power, who understood that luxury could be sustainable and beauty could have purpose." Maya's heart raced. "Lewis, let me finish, please." His voice was rough with emotion. "These past 2 weeks, watching you handle everything with such grace and courage, it only confirmed what I already knew. You're extraordinary, Maya. Not because of any position or opportunity, but because of who you are." The lights flickered again as another thunderclap shook the windows. In the momentary darkness, Maya felt the electricity between them intensify. "The board wants to move forward with the sustainable luxury line," Lewis continued. They're even more convinced now after seeing the lengths our competitors went to stop it. The position is still yours if you want it. And if I don't? Maya asked quietly. Then nothing changes about how I feel. Lewis's hand moved across the table, not quite touching hers. I meant what I said before. Everything, nothing, whatever you're willing to give. The choice is yours. Maya stared at the small space between their hands on the table, thinking about choices and consequences, about walls and the courage it takes to break them down. I have conditions, she said finally. Lewis's eyebrows raised slightly. I'm listening. First, if I take the position, it needs to be clear that I report to the board, not directly to you. There needs to be transparency and professional distance. He nodded. Already arranged. The board insisted on it after your presentation. Second, Maya continued, no more secrets. If there are threats to the project, personal or professional, we face them together. Agreed. His fingers moved slightly closer to hers. Third, Maya took a deep breath. Whatever this is between us, it needs to develop separately from work. No mixed signals, no blurred lines. If we're going to explore these feelings, it has to be outside the office on equal footing. Lightning flashed, illuminating the vulnerability in Lewis's eyes. And are we going to explore these feelings? Maya finally closed the distance between their hands, letting her fingers intertwine with his. The contact sent sparks through her entire body. I think we already are. The cafe lights flickered one final time and went out completely. In the darkness, lit only by the storm's flashes and the glow of emergency exits, Maya felt Lewis's other hand cup her cheek. His thumb traced her jawline with infinite tenderness. Maya, he whispered, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. The lights came back on, but neither of them moved away. Around them, other customers chatted about the power surge, but in their corner booth time seemed suspended. We should probably talk about practical things, Maya said softly. Transition timelines, project schedules. We should, Lewis agreed, but his thumb was still tracing patterns on her hand, and his eyes held storms more compelling than the one outside. Tomorrow, she decided. We can discuss business tomorrow. Tomorrow, he echoed, a smile playing at his lips. Over. Dinner, perhaps. There's a small Italian place in the West Village. Not a chance, Maya laughed softly. If we're doing this on equal footing, we're starting with real Brooklyn pizza. No power plays, no luxury restaurants. The joy that lit up Lewis's face made him look years younger. Deal. They sat there as the storm gradually moved east, fingers intertwined, talking about everything and nothing. Maya told him about growing up in New Jersey, about her mother's creative recycling projects that had inspired her sustainable design passion. Lewis shared stories about his father, about learning the business from the ground up, about the pressure of living up to a legacy. When they finally left the cafe, the rain had softened to a gentle mist. Lewis insisted on walking her home, their shoulders brushing as they navigated puddle-strewn sidewalks. At her building's entrance, Maya turned to face him. This won't be easy, you know. People will talk, make assumptions. Let them. Lewis tucked a rain-dampened curl behind her ear. We know the truth. And what is the truth? That sometimes the bravest thing isn't building walls. His eyes held hers in the soft glow of streetlights. Sometimes it's letting someone see right through them. Maya rose on her tiptoes and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Good night, Lewis. Good night, Maya. She watched him walk away, his figure disappearing into the misty Brooklyn night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, contracts to sign, boundaries to establish, a delicate balance to maintain. But tonight, in the aftermath of storms both literal and metaphorical, Maya felt nothing but peace. Her phone buzzed. Olivia, demanding details. But for now, Maya wanted to keep this moment private. The lingering warmth of Lewis's hand in hers, the promise of pizza in the West Village, the knowledge that sometimes the most unexpected detours led exactly where you were meant to be. The holiday season transformed Manhattan into a glittering wonderland, but inside Kane Enterprises' main conference room, tension crackled like static electricity. Maya stood before the board, presenting the final designs for the Sustainable Luxury Line's launch, acutely aware of Lewis sitting silently at the far end of the table. 2 months had passed since their coffee shop reconciliation. 2 months of carefully balanced professional distance at work and increasingly intimate evenings spent exploring each other's worlds. Brooklyn Pizza had led to authentic Dominican restaurants in Washington Heights, quiet walks through frost-covered Central Park, and long conversations about dreams and fears over cups of tea on Maya's fire escape. But today, none of that personal warmth could exist in this room. Today was about business. The packaging designs utilize recycled materials without sacrificing luxury appeal, Maya explained, clicking through her presentation. Each piece is not only sustainable, but tells a story of conscious consumption and environmental responsibility. Impressive, said Victoria Bennett, one of the board members who'd been initially skeptical of Maya's appointment. But there's another matter we need to discuss. She slid a tablet across the table. Have you seen this? Maya's heart sank as she recognized the Business News website. The headline read, "Exclusive. Internal documents reveal Kane Enterprises' sustainable line may not be so green." The article went live an hour ago, Victoria continued. They're claiming our manufacturing processes don't match our environmental promises, that we're greenwashing luxury goods to capitalize on eco-conscious consumers. Maya felt Lewis tense at the other end of the table, but she kept her voice steady. Those claims are false. I've personally overseen every aspect of the production chain. Our processes exceed industry standards for sustainability. The documents appear genuine, another board member interjected. Manufacturing reports, supplier contracts, they're fabricated. Lewis spoke for the first time, his voice tight with controlled anger. Another attempt by our competitors to derail the launch. Perhaps, Victoria agreed, but the damage is already spreading on social media. Environmental groups are calling for boycotts. Luxury retailers are getting nervous. Maya's mind raced. The launch was scheduled for next month. Years of work, millions in investment, her own professional reputation, all hanging in the balance. We need to respond immediately, she said, pulling up data on her laptop. I have documentation of every sustainability certification, every materials test, The conference room door burst open. Andrea rushed in, her usual composure shattered. Mr. Kane, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's all over the news. Someone leaked private emails between you and Miss Soares. The room fell silent. Maya's blood turned to ice as Andrea handed tablets to the board members. She didn't need to see them to know which emails they were. The late-night messages discussing more than just business, the gradual shift from professional to personal, the growing intimacy that they'd tried so hard to keep separate from work. This is an orchestrated attack, Lewis said, standing. The fake documents, the leaked emails, they're trying to discredit both the project and the people behind it. It's worse than that, Victoria said grimly, scrolling through her tablet. These emails are being presented as evidence that the entire sustainable luxury line was developed under compromised leadership. That personal relationship clouded professional judgment. Maya felt the room spinning, everything they'd built, all their careful boundaries and professional distance, crumbling under the weight of private moments made public. I'll resign, she heard herself say. If that's what it takes to save the project, no. Lewis's voice cracked like a whip. That's exactly what they want, to force us to choose between personal happiness and professional integrity. He turned to the board. Everything in those emails happened after Maya was appointed. Every decision about the project has been documented and approved by this board. We've done nothing wrong. Except fall in love, Maya said quietly, and the word silenced the room. She hadn't meant to say it, hadn't even fully admitted it to herself until this moment. But there it was, the truth that their enemies had seen and tried to use against them. Lewis's eyes met hers across the conference room, storm clouds gathering in their depths. For a moment, the rest of the world fell away. Victoria's voice broke the spell. Love isn't the issue. Public perception is. We need to decide how to handle this crisis before the launch is completely derailed. Maya straightened her shoulders. Then let's handle it with complete transparency. No defensive statements, no legal threats. She moved to the presentation screen, pulling up a new document. We release everything, every sustainability certification, every production record, every board meeting minute, showing the proper channels of approval. Let the public see the truth. And the emails, someone asked. Those too. Maya's voice was steady now. Let them see that it's possible to maintain professional integrity while being human, that love and ethics aren't mutually exclusive. She felt rather than saw Lewis move to stand beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Maya's right, he said. We built this project on transparency and trust. We defend it the same way. He addressed the board directly. The sustainable luxury line isn't just about eco-friendly packaging or green manufacturing. It's about proving that business can be both profitable and principled, that relationships, professional and personal, can be both powerful and ethical. The boardroom erupted in discussion. As plans were made and strategies debated, Maya felt Lewis's hand brush against hers, hidden from view beneath the presentation podium. A small gesture, but it carried the weight of everything they'd built together. Trust forged in crisis, love tempered by integrity. Hours later, after statements had been drafted and documents prepared for release, Maya stood at her office window watching snow begin to fall over Manhattan. The next few days would be crucial. Their enemies had played their hand, hoping to destroy both the project and the relationship that had grown alongside it. "Hey," Lewis's voice came from her doorway. "Ready to face the storm?" Maya turned, to find him watching her with those eyes that had first captured her heart in a hotel room so many months ago. Together? He crossed the room to stand beside her, their reflections overlapping in the window glass. "Always. Though I have to admit, I didn't expect you to drop the L word in a board meeting." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I didn't exactly plan it." "I'm glad you did," Lewis's voice was soft, "because I love you too, have for a while now." Outside, the snow fell harder, wrapping the city in a blanket of white that made everything look new and possible. Maya leaned into Lewis's warmth, thinking about walls of glass and hearts laid bare, about love that was strong enough to withstand both professional scrutiny and personal doubt. Tomorrow they would face the media storm, defend their work and their relationship in the court of public opinion. But tonight, watching snow transform Manhattan into a winter wonderland, Maya knew they'd already won the most important battle. The one between fear and trust, between protecting yourself and risking everything for something real. "Take me home," she asked softly. "Brooklyn pizza?" "Actually," Maya smiled, "I was thinking we could try that Italian place in the West Village. Sometimes luxury and authenticity can coexist." Lewis laughed, the sound warm and real in the gathering darkness. Now who's mixing business metaphors with romance? But he took her hand, and together they walked out into the snowy evening, leaving behind the glass towers and power plays for the simple truth they'd found in each other. Sometimes the biggest risks brought the greatest rewards. Sometimes love was worth fighting for, in boardrooms and Brooklyn cafes alike. The launch event for Kane Enterprises' sustainable luxury line transformed the plaza's grand ballroom into an ethereal space of light and shadow. Glass installations caught and reflected the winter sunset, creating prisms that danced across the walls. Every detail embodied the marriage of luxury and sustainability, from the living wall of local plants to the recycled crystal chandeliers. Maya stood in a quiet corner, running her fingers over one of the display pieces. The packaging she'd designed unfolded like flower petals, each layer telling a story of consciousness and care. 3 months had passed since the leaked emails and false documents had threatened to destroy everything. 3 months of public scrutiny, transparent responses, and unwavering determination. "There you are." Olivia appeared at her side, resplendent, in a vintage designer dress. "The press is already calling it the most innovative luxury launch in decades." "You did it, Maya." "We did it," Maya corrected, smiling at her friend. "I wouldn't be here without you believing in me from the start." "Speaking of beginnings," Olivia nodded toward the ballroom entrance. "Isn't that the room you were supposed to be in that first night?" Maya laughed softly. "Actually, that was upstairs, room 2010. She looked around the glittering space. "But this room has its own kind of magic now." "A lot has changed since then," Olivia squeezed her arm. Look, who just arrived. Maya turned to see Natalie Walsh entering the ballroom, accompanied by Victoria Bennett. The creative director caught Maya's eye and gave her a subtle nod, a gesture of pride and vindication. The room gradually filled with industry leaders, environmental activists and luxury retailers. Maya moved among them, discussing the innovative designs and sustainable processes with growing confidence. This was her vision brought to life, proof that beauty didn't have to come at the Earth's expense. "Miss Soares?" A familiar voice made her turn. Abigail Warner stood there, looking slightly uncomfortable in the crowded space. "I owe you an apology," Maya felt rather than saw Lewis approach, his presence steady at her shoulder. Abigail's eyes flickered between them. "I let old hurt and business rivalry cloud my judgment," Abigail continued. "What I did, trying to destroy your reputation, your relationship, it was wrong." "Why now?" Maya asked quietly. "Because you proved me wrong. About Lewis, about leadership, about everything." Abigail managed a small smile. "My company is facing bankruptcy after the SEC investigation. But watching how you both handled the crisis, it taught me something about integrity." Lewis spoke for the first time. "We all learn from our mistakes, Abigail. The hard part is admitting them." Abigail nodded, understanding the forgiveness offered in his words. "Congratulations on the launch. You've created something remarkable here." With that, she disappeared, into the crowd. Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Lewis's hand found hers, hidden from view between them. "You okay?" he murmured. "Better than okay." Maya squeezed his fingers. "Ready for your speech?" Lewis groaned softly. "I still think you should do it. You're the heart of this project. And you're its voice. Besides," she smiled up at him, "I have my own announcement to make later." His eyebrows rose questioningly, but Maya just pushed him toward the stage. The room fell quiet as Lewis took his place at the podium, command settling over him like a well-worn coat. "Good evening," he began. "A year ago, Kane Enterprises set out to prove that luxury could be sustainable, that profit and principle could coexist. But we discovered something even more valuable along the way, that the strongest foundations are built on trust, and the most beautiful designs come from letting down our walls." His eyes found Maya's in the crowd as he continued. "This line represents more than just sustainable luxury. It represents the power of second chances, of seeing beyond surface judgments to the truth beneath. Every piece tells a story of transformation, from recycled materials into objects of beauty, from old ways of thinking into new possibilities." The speech drew appreciative applause, but Maya barely heard it. She was thinking about her own transformation, from uncertain intern to confident designer, from cautious observer to passionate advocate, from a woman afraid of power to one who had learned to wield it with grace. Later, as the event wound down and the winter night pressed against the ballroom's windows, Maya took the stage herself. The announcement she'd been waiting to make felt right in this moment of triumph. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began. "The success of this launch proves what we've believed all along, that people are ready for change, ready to embrace beauty that doesn't compromise our future, which is why I'm excited to announce the creation of the Kane Foundation's Sustainable Design Initiative." A murmur went through the crowd. In the front row, Lewis's eyes widened slightly. This part hadn't been in the official plans. "Starting next year," Maya continued, "we'll be offering fellowships to young designers from underrepresented backgrounds, providing them with the resources and mentorship to bring their sustainable innovations to life. Because true luxury isn't about exclusivity, it's about creating beauty that uplifts everyone." The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Maya caught glimpses of proud smiles, Olivia wiping away tears, Natalie nodding in approval, Victoria already making notes on her tablet. But it was Lewis's expression that made her heart soar. He was looking at her like she was magic, like she'd just proven again why he'd fallen in love with her. The party continued around them, but Maya and Lewis found their way to a quiet balcony, overlooking the city. Snow was falling again, adding to the blanket that had transformed Manhattan into a winter wonderland. The Foundation Initiative, Lewis said softly. That's what you've been working on in secret? Maya nodded. I wanted to prove that walls don't just need to come down, they can be rebuilt into bridges. She turned to face him. Are you okay? With me using your name for it? Maya. Lewis cupped her face in his hands. Everything I am, everything I've built, it's better because of you. Use it all. She rose on her tiptoes to kiss him, tasting champagne and possibility on his lips. When they parted, snowflakes were catching in his dark hair, making him look younger, softer. I have something else to tell you, Maya said, suddenly nervous. I'm moving out of my Brooklyn apartment. Lewis stilled. Oh? The commute to Manhattan is too long, especially with the foundation work starting. She tried to keep her voice casual. I was thinking about finding a place in the city, or, Lewis said carefully, you could move in with me. Maya pretended to consider it. I don't know. Your place is pretty fancy, not very sustainable. We could fix that. His eyes crinkled with amusement and love. Solar panels, recycling, systems, a rooftop garden. A home as consciously designed as everything else in our lives? Exactly. Lewis pulled her closer as another wave of snowflakes swirled around them. What do you say? Maya looked up at him. This man who had learned to trust again, who had faced public scrutiny and private fears to build something real with her. Behind them, the launch party continued, celebrating their professional triumph. But here, in the snow-kissed darkness, they were just two people who had found each other by accident and chosen to stay by design. Yes, she whispered, to all of it. The apartment, the future, everything. Lewis's kiss tasted of joy and promise. When they finally went back inside, the ballroom lights caught Maya's ring finger, where a small piece of sea glass Lewis had, found on their first beach walk together, now hung on a recycled silver chain. Not a traditional engagement ring, but a perfect symbol of their journey. Beauty, born from transformation, strength, forged through authenticity. The sustainable luxury line would go on to revolutionize the industry. The Kane Foundation would nurture new generations of conscious designers. But Maya and Lewis's greatest creation was the love they'd built together. A love without walls, strong enough to weather any storm, sustainable enough to last a lifetime. As they made their way through the thinning crowd, Maya caught their reflection in one of the glass installations. No longer the uncertain intern and the guarded CEO, but partners in every sense, in business, in purpose, in life. They had broken old patterns to create something new, something real. And in the end, that was the most luxurious thing of all. While Maya and Lewis built their love story by overcoming prejudice, corporate conspiracies, and their own fears, they showed us that sometimes you have to risk everything for something real. If you were in Maya's shoes, would you have the courage to face all these obstacles for love, even if you knew it could cost you your professional reputation? What would you do? Choose to protect your career or follow your heart, believing that it's possible to achieve both. Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.